You know, we all know Denman, it's an iconic brand. Most of us think of something that looks like this, some variation or a paddle brush. But Denman's got lots of different brushes for everything that, that you can do to hair. Today I wanted to share with you something that, you know, I've been doing since the 90s. And I think it gives a very kind of 90s look. It's using a round brush. In this case, it's the Denman Head Hugger. It's called the Head Hugger because of the way it curves like that. So when you get down close to the head, it hugs the head. So you can get a nice even kind of lift and root volume. Here you'll see I'm working with hair that's basically, not basically, it's totally dry. This is like kind of what we'd call a dry set. Maybe for a second look, or if you need to change something without wetting it down, or you just want something that looks softer and not so, so controlled. So in this case, the hair was already naturally dried beautifully, had a nice smooth curl to it just from being kind of air dried. So it doesn't need a lot of smoothing. I've put a little bit of volume foam in first, and I will lightly, sometimes I'll either do it with this wide brush because what I don't want here is tension. I just want to get some heat and some smoothness on the cuticle if I feel like it needs it. So sometimes I'll use this wide Denman here. I'm not pulling the hair at all, I'm just laying it on, getting the heat on the pad to get some smoothness into it if it needs it. Then, and you could also do that with the round brush, but you tend to get a little bit more tension. Then I'm laying it around and treating this like a roller. And you'll notice I'm going to work on the root first. I think a lot of round brushing these days is about the ends, which is great. It's that beachy look. But when you want more kind of glam, set, styled hair, you really need to work on the root, getting that bend in and that lift in. So you can see I'm just rolling, unrolling, rolling, unrolling, rolling, unrolling. I've got it on low air, but high heat. And the foam that I have in there is a nice protective foam. Then I move out a little bit further. Maybe pass through lightly. Get the ends around the brush. And now work from the middle back down to the root. You don't have to go all the way down, and just making sure there's not a lot of tension. The hair is not sliding through the brush. The brush basically is taking the place of a roller. So, you know, we all know a wet set with rollers. This is essentially a dry set using a ceramic thermodynamic head-hugging brush from Denman. It's called the Head Hugger. Gets that heat evenly. If anything, it's much more like a hot roller set in a way. But I think even, you know, more organic than that. Root, middles, out to the ends. Again, working from the root out, feeling the hair, gently coming from the underneath to smooth. Maybe one more time. Keeping the, you know, the heat close, but not so close that I feel like it's going to create any damage. And just making sure that product's getting dried in. When I feel that I've got it, I want to let it cool, so I want to quickly, and this is kind of simple, but I make like a little peace sign with my fingers. I come around, I put the ends in the fingertips so they're tucked in neatly. That's helped me a lot to try to be neater with this. And I'll do that a couple more times. And then getting a pin, a longer pin that doesn't have any teeth or grooves on it, because that can make it really hard to get them out later. All right, I'm gonna do this probably, you can see I've pre-done a lot of them. So I'm probably gonna do about 3, 4, 5, about 7. So, and then we'll talk about brushing out using different Denman brushes. So again, at first I can use a wide brush like this. This is their widest kind of traditional Denman style brush. Then I want to work with some type of foam. I really like foam for stuff like this because it doesn't really wet the hair the way, you know, like a liquidy product would. I think it dampens without like saturating it. And I find that it's much easier to work with later on as I start to brush out the hair. Again, I can use the wider just to dry the product into the hair and smooth it if it needs any smoothing. No tension here. I'm not trying to pull the hair. That's kind of one thing that I won't be doing a lot of, is pulling or stretching the hair. I'm doing the opposite. I'm trying to like kind of tighten it on itself. Okay? Switching to the appropriate brush, and these come in multiple sizes, and in certain areas as the hair gets shorter, I'll switch to smaller sizes. I think here I can still work with the larger. So root, focus on the root. Really dry the product in, get the bend into the hair. A little bit of smoothness, now come into the middle. So to some degree, it's a little bit of the opposite of what we've been doing a lot of, which is focusing on working on the ends, getting the ends to have the most movement, and then the middle less, and then the root a lot of times quite flat. I mean, to me, that's kind of more of a beachy look, where this will be a little bit more, I'd say, glam, a great basic way of setting hair for, you know, more styling, updos, things like that. And also just very popular kind of in the 90s, and I'm seeing a lot of that, the 90s blowout or the Cindy Crawford kind of look. And that's when I learned hairdressing, so I'm still a product of that era. Similar to kind of a Velcro roller set. But again, there's all subtle differences in everything. So once you feel like you've got that product dried in and it's heated sufficiently, we want to make that quick transfer while we still have the heat. Peace sign. Bring it around. Get the ends between your fingers, and that's a nice, neat way of getting them inside. And then coming through and pinning. A giant pin curl, kind of, in a way. Do the same thing on this side. Again, I'll probably do about, I think it's about 7 I have left to do here. I'd like to say hello to everyone that's joining us. We have some friends out there from around the world, I'm sure. Hello, we usually do. Working today, I'm Gerard, if I haven't met you before. I'm a co-founder of the Hairbrain community and a hairdresser of over 30 years. And I get the honor to you know, share what I've learned over the years and kind of on behalf of the brands that support us. Today, working on a brand that I'm so happy to be affiliated with, which is Denman. I've had Denman in my career since the day I started hairdressing. They make incredible brushes, incredible tools. They've been true to hairdressers for a very, very long time, and a professional brand that we love. And a lot of diversity. Again, you know, sometimes you can be the kind of the victim of your own success, and when people think of Denman, they think of one brush. They call it a Denman brush, but Denman's got literally dozens of different types of brushes. You know, the 9-row brush, nylon brush that everyone knows very well, obviously is a staple. But they've got so many other great brushes, and I'll be using quite a few of them here. Right now I'm working with the ceramic kind of thermodynamic head hugger, which to me, it's a round brush with a handle on it. It's like a manual hot roller, which I love. Now, of course, you can use these to just smooth out the hair and straighten it, but I think that they're great for this, and I think that the way that they're designed, this little hourglass shape, especially so as you get down onto the head, you've got an even root lift. Keeping that heat on there. You know, trying to develop a rhythm and, you know, not pulling through the hair. Little peace sign, around, get the ends in, pull it in, roll it down, try to keep it neat. You know, if one starts to loosen, you can always kind of throw in an extra pin. Shouldn't make too much of a difference, but it's always nice to work neat. Coming up into the top. I kind of organically sectioned here, I'm going to be honest with you. I looked at the way the hair had dried naturally with the wave. I kind of brickworked the back a little bit, and then I worked on some diagonals on the top. I didn't really overthink it. I just kind of looked at the way the hair was already growing naturally based on air drying. And then I just kind of tried to follow that. So we'll get a natural kind of flow. Same idea, using this wide tube. You know, since the hair, I don't feel like I need a lot of force of air here. The hair's already dry. I just need enough air and heat to dry the product in, smooth the cuticle. I'm not using a ton of tension. I'll move down to the next size, a little bit smaller of a roller, so to speak.
That's right, you have Alberto Pucciardi tuning in from Italy.
Oh, my dear friend who I have not seen since before the pandemic. Alberto's my friend. He used to visit me sometimes 2 or 3 times a year in the US. And he has not been here since the pandemic, and we desperately miss him. We were in Italy this time three years ago. Exactly 3 years ago. So again, always great to have our international friends, especially my dear friend Alberto. Ciao, Alberto. So again, you can see really setting that in. Smaller brush, obviously the hair is shorter. I want to make sure that we get some curl. If you're using a very large brush on shorter hair, you know, you might not get as much pop and curl and wave. Again, coming in on this side. I kind of sectioned out a diagonal across the crown. Again, not overthinking it, but I know if I just put, you know, a total straight part on the crown, it probably will look a little too forced. So I just kind of diagonally sectioned it. Again, smoothing, controlling. I was thinking about the roots. I mean, I know if you're anything like me, when I was in cosmetology school and studying any of that stuff, I was like, oh man, I don't want to do roller sets. I'm never going to do pin curls. I want to be cut hair. I want to really, you know, do cool stuff to hair or be an editorial hairdresser. And then, you know, you see that that's really what it's all about. Even cutting hair, understanding root direction, volume, over direction, all the things. So if you are someone who's maybe in school or just thinking about like, why am I doing this? It's not 1920 anymore. I mean, of course, there's always the thing that things come around and change, but it's all that stuff is kind of like the foundation of great dexterity and understanding. Working with pivot point mannequins here, a great way to practice, something that, you know, again, so fortunate to work with some great brands out there, including Denman, Pivot Point, and quite a few others. Come through. Again, we can see we've got the back set. The bottom ones are looser because I don't want to lose the length. So the root was kind of held down, and then there's more and more volume towards the inside. Okay, I kind of started on the front over here. These were all brought down and forward because I want it so that the root will have like a nice bend and wave when it comes back. And then this was brought down and over. I'm going to continue on this side of the parting, and then we'll work up this side here. So just a few more. Again, I hope you're enjoying that. A little bit different from my norm, but I like to challenge myself and also just look back at the things that I've learned over the years. And, you know, learning something like this has been crucial for me. Even though most of the time I dry and style hair in a very natural way, it's nice to be able to, you know, really do different things. I've jumped in a few times at Fashion Week and at different events like that. Now going to the smallest head hugger here. This, I think, will dry pretty quickly, so I don't really feel like I need to pre-dry it too much. Again, coming kind of very directionally away from that side. And then trying to get in at the root first, putting that bend in. Out to the middle, down to the root. All the way out to the ends. There's lots of texture in this too, so that can be a little tricky. The mousse definitely helps. I'm going to switch hands as well. Keep the hair directed the same way, but see if I can get some control with different hand position. Root, iron it in, middle, and out to the end. Trying to get all that hair in my fingers. Bringing it around. A little bit smaller here, obviously, so just being a little more dainty with it. Just gonna reach across and grab a pin while I can. Using smaller, lighter pins on the lighter hair because the weight of them can just kind of pull it right out. I'm bringing that across. This last little piece here. I mean, you know, I think obviously, as we said, there's a lot of art to knowing the directions and stuff, but I also think that just like having some intuition with the way the hair wants to move can sometimes make these things look very modern, as opposed to overly perfectly sculpted. I always think of my old friend Dennis Lonnie, those of you that know him, one of the finest editorial hairdressers, and he just has this intuitive way with the hair that I've always admired and tried to have myself. You know, you can transfer, it doesn't have to just be, again, speaking of Dennis, he would often kind of get this curl in and transfer it onto balls of yarn. I've seen him use carrots. Or obviously quite simple and just put it on a Velcro roller. It's all about getting these slightly different effects in the curl. That's subtlety. And by curl here, I don't mean natural curl. I mean curl in the sense of hair dressing. Curled hair, set hair. You're really transforming the hair. So again, even on this little hair, root, middle, end. But oftentimes I see people just leave the brush in. I never have enough brushes to do that, but should work if you've got a lot of brushes. This one's gonna be a little trickier because it's got a lot of little bits and pieces going on. You know, I mean, the next stage when we're brushing out, I think can be really, first of all, challenging, you know, because you have to take it kind of slowly and really kind of see what the hair is going to do. And you'll see, I think that's another reason why the Denman brushes are great, because there's so many varieties. I can start quite loose and then work my way to more and more control, which I think is a great way. I find a great way for brushing out sets, whether it be any type of set. I think sometimes we forget about the brush out. I think, you know, we moved beyond that, but for a while there was a lot of hair that was just set and dropped down. And I just never found it as pretty as really kind of finishing it and brushing it out. Okay, so again, this hair, it's cut quite short next to the face and the face frame. So directing it forward will help me keep some of that hair. Drying the product in first. And then this time I'm going to kind of come like so from the root. Bring it around. Root. Really try to get that movement baked into the hair. Middle. Using the air. And then out to the ends. Not a lot of gliding or pulling through the hair. It's more setting. High heat, low airflow. Just really baking it in. Just grab that little piece and put it on the brush. Change my same angle with the brush, but just a different hand position. That head hugger, great for this. It really kind of gathers the hair in the center of the brush. Then the ceramic distributes the heat nice and evenly, which is exactly what we want. Okay, we'll bring that around. Remembering to work quickly here. while we still have that warmth in the hair. You know, this is all about letting it cool with a little bit of extra set, a little extra control. I'll use a bigger clip here because there's more hair. And then we'll just have a few more bits right in here. And I take a quick look at the other side just to get an idea of balance. Another one forward, and then one forward here, and then these all came back, creating kind of undulation in the hair. Should make for an interesting brush out. You know, if this hair's been kind of in the clip for a while, so using my very gentle vent brush so that I'm not pulling on the hair, not overly stretching it. And I'll use that a bit in my brush out too. As I said, I'll build up all the way from the fingers through to more and more control. Getting some product on there. I love for foams and mousses, and you know, in the 90s, we definitely used a lot of foams and mousses, you know, for setting and styling. They don't get that crunchy dryness to them, so they give exactly what I'm looking for, as opposed to like a gel or anything like that. Should be very workable when I brush the hair out. So working the root first. Just rolling and unrolling, rolling and unrolling. You have to have a decent amount of patience with something like this. And you know, you don't really want to do this on soaking wet hair. At the very least, you'd want to power dry it first, perhaps using a Denman paddle brush, or flipping over using your hands in the blow dryer. You know, you don't want a lot of moisture in the hair, because really what you're trying to do here only happens in that last second when the hair goes from damp to dry. Another reason why I'm just adding mousse, you know, it just dampens the hair enough that it's not going to take 10 minutes to dry the section. Larger section here, you know, because I'm around the edges. I don't want them super tight. I just want to put some bend and movement in, and then get more volume on the top and the inside. So smaller sectioning, smaller brushes, shorter layers. But here we just want to get some bend, but we don't want to lose all that length. If I break it up into a whole bunch of little bits, it might pop up, you know, like a set and look shorter. Working that in. Just a few little pieces up here left in the jigsaw. It's kind of a little puzzle here. So these should definitely be smaller. And again, I'm going to continue to work them forward, just to kind of disrupt the way the top goes, instead of having this perfect kind of bouffant flow that you would think, oh, bring it back. I'm going to bring it forward and then work on a lot of brushing out and see if I get something a little bit more unique out of it. It's a product on both of these. Go into my smallest brush. I've got 3 sizes. There may be more, but I've got 3. They seem to be pretty much exactly what I would need. Root. Gonna get the brush out of the dryer switched over so I'm not interface. Middle. Up to the end. Smooth it a little bit. and roll it. And get some air on these ends without rolling them all the way down, because once they're, you know, they're covered by hair. There we go. Put another angle on it. Now you can see if you're getting the bend in as you transition. That hair, it kind of moves around the rod. Bring it back. Again, a little pin curl. And one last little piece to the puzzle here. I got some product on there already from when I had it, using my vent brush, which is a very gentle brush. You know, if you feel like it's going to be hard to control, you can kind of come through once or twice. You know, this will also help all those little layers or texture. I think this was cut with a razor, this mannequin. There's a lot of like little texture in there that'll help that to kind of blend in with the other hair nicely. Should make it a little easier to work with. So you're setting from the scalp out, root, work out to the middle, ends. I don't need to go all the way back down to the head, you know. Actually, I'll get better heat if I do root, middle, ends, and then maybe sometimes at the end I roll it all down just to get it one last little bit. And again, little pin curl there. Okay. Now I'll go right into the back as the top and the front really cools down. We'll start doing some brushing now. You know, this is where your choice of pins is going to make a big difference. Ask me how I know. You want ones that are real smooth, like these are the star clips from Hairbrained. They don't have anything on them to catch the hair. You know, I'll start with my fingers. Fingers, maybe even just one finger or a tail comb. Then something real loose, like a vest brush, vent brush. We'll leave that for a moment. Move over to here. Again, this should be kind of the loosest part. We just wanted to get a little movement on it without losing all the length. You know, don't be afraid to brush it. I mean, that's part of what we're creating here. It's a different kind of finish. Come to the middle. Real gentle with the clip here. You can see these are going to be a bit tighter. Fingers, Denman vent brush from the underneath, a little bit from the top, and continue to move through here. Just really pay attention to where the clip is. You can see these guys are a little bit tighter. As we work towards the inside, it should get tighter and tighter. Shorter layers, smaller brush, and a little bit more focus on them being tighter and tighter. I do like to take them out one at a time, and instead of taking it all out and kind of brushing it, just a nice way to kind of get the set to start to loosen up and perform. I've got other brushes that we'll go to. This is just kind of stage one. Fingers. A little bit of the vent brush. Gently remove these. It's a dry set. You know, this hair actually, before I started, was totally in its natural curl. So this was a nice way of transforming without ever having to wash or condition the hair again. Just went right in using some foam. In this case, I used the Davines volume foam, which I really love. Shout out to Davines. Great setting foam and super light, even for all the control that it gives me. This is easy to brush out. And again, going for that little bit more glamour in what's happening there. There'll be a little bit more work to do, but let me come into the sides now. Drop it, fingers. Sometimes I'll use a wide tail comb for this too, but in this case, I'm just using my finger, then using the vent brush. These were all directed towards the front because, you know, the way the hair had curled and dried naturally, it seemed to really kind of make sense. And I knew that that would give a nice volume around the face. Again, going with that kind of 90s glamour, supermodel-esque vibe. Tilting the head towards me, bringing these when I comb them out straight up, brushing out. And there'll be a point here where I can start to kind of come in with this beautiful little boar bristle brush to kind of really go even a step further. So it's a slow process. Not slow in time, but slow in how you approach it. You don't want to just, you know, you don't put the icing on the cake before it's baked. So this is part of the baking still. And having all the different grains of brush to work with is so important here. So this is nice, the vent brush, very flexible, very easy to work with. I was just looking at the whole collection of them. Great brush for getting product in and drawing with low tension. Then we've got, this is, I didn't need this because the hair wasn't tangled, but the Tangle Tamer, amazing. Been using that a lot. And I think I could probably even use that pretty well for a later stage in the brush out. I might play around with that. But you can see what we've got here, very glamorous, bouncy hair. Well, let's see how this direction worked around the face. Let's see what we got here. I'm gonna brush it in the direction. Seems to be working. We've got some glam happening there. There's obviously a shorter, this was kind of razored with a face frame and a shorter feeling around the face. Probably have to do some detailing to really dial that in and to kind of get some refinement, but definitely something happening in the glam department. There we go. We'll work on those roots in just a minute. Very bombshell. Again, if you're just joining, great thing about this is you'll be able to rewatch it any time. I've got well over 600, I think it's probably closer to 700. We should probably take a count, Cal, because I'm not really sure how many we have, but we've got somewhere between 600 and 1,000 of these lessons, not just from me, but from artists all over the world, many different ways of doing hair. A lot of them working with great brands like we're working with Denman here today, using the tools and the products. Also lots of independent talent. Coming through here. Okay, so now using the vent brush all the way through, again, not being afraid to brush through the hair. If that set was really in there, all of this will respond and react and move and live. Sometimes, especially with long hair like this, I love the kind of paddle brush for this. So we're going to a tighter grain, tighter, finer grain. And again, brushing it in different directions, sometimes different directions than it was originally set in, will really give you different effects. Like I love what's happening right there, where that drops in. So sometimes when it's possible to not be overly set in the way that you want the hair to go. I'm not saying that, you know, there aren't often times where you need to go exactly in a certain direction, but sometimes, you know, I find this very interesting if you've got a little bit of freedom and you say, well, what happens if I push it this way? Something really cool can happen. Now, the final kind of level for me would be to get to something a little bit tighter and perhaps bore bristle to really kind of come through, polish. You can start to use a hairspray or a shine spray at this point. You can start to, if you're going to the next level and perhaps use some pins, you can start to think about how you might pin the hair. Really take your time with this. The more time you have to play, really the more fabulous it can be. It's not, it's really it's like the refining of a cut. You know, everything has its, or getting that perfect toner, taking your time to apply it thoroughly makes all the difference, because it really, those last few seconds is when something magical can happen. So as I always say with cutting, it's so difficult to do this without a mirror, because at this point I'd really be looking in the mirror. Let me come around, Cal, and look on the screen, let's see. Sorry, that was me, guys. Okay, just playing around. Getting the hands in there again. So working with the idea of a dry set, you're not going to have as tight or hammered in of a look as you would with a curling iron or a curl rod or even a straight iron that you're turning. You're going to have volume and bend and movement in kind of a glamorous way without overdoing it. Well, I'm going to play with her a little bit more. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I want to thank our friends at Denman for supplying me with these incredible tools to work with. And my friends at Pivot Point for making these great mannequins and tripods. And of course, all of you who spent a little bit of time with me today. Take care, guys.